What's up, guys? So this is kind of a fun day. Race car part 2. A friend of mine selling off his car. Happened to be selling this thing, so just picked up this 1G, and now I got another project we're going to be starting. Can't tell you what we're going to do with it yet, but it's going to be pretty cool. Thanks to Joey coming to help me out for picking up the car, but just got it back. Didn't want to film at the original owner's house, but one owner car. Some of you may recognize this car if you know whose car this was. It is not stock, but it's going to be a fun little toy, and we'll reveal what's going to happen with this car here short enough, but I wanted to just show you guys what we're up to. All right, so now that we've got this car in the garage here, we can finally take a look at it, kind of fill you guys in on what this thing actually has in it. So this is a 2.3 liter stroker. This is one of the stroker engines. Has a FP 3052 on it. Unknown size injectors. I'll have to get in there and look at them. I'm sure they're pretty big, but GM MAF, looks like a blow-through setup, MAF translator, aftermarket radiator, etc. This was a great car. I raced against this car for a number of years, and it's fast. It's definitely fast. In fact, my friend had done a couple things just to kind of lighten it up. Had taken out the back seat, and in favor of a back seat, he actually put in a water injection kit because he was running on regular fuel back then. I mean, nowadays, you know, this thing will be fully run on ethanol and we won't need water injection. We'll switch that all over, or we'll just simply turn the boost down and run good old 91, right? Something like that, because I want to take this car and basically turn it, for the most part, back into a street warrior, a car that I could take autocrossing or just potentially have a good cruise in it, right? Should be a lot of fun. But first things first, we've got to get rid of that water injection. Alright guys, so I'm going to jump just a slight bit ahead here. I did go ahead and finish out the interior. I mean, I'm sure you guys saw me start to install the seats there. Went ahead and put that in. Seats are all done. Went ahead and vacuumed it all out. Got it looking at least mostly clean. This car really is very nicely put together. In fact, the interior is in great shape. I was so happy to put this back in there. Picked up a partial shelf from a guy here locally. I do have the laptop in here too, because this does have one of these nice little Zetronic wideband displays, which of course allows you to do some logging. Laptop sitting over here, but this thing being on ethanol and not being started for quite some time, a week or so ago. Let's see if I can get you guys set up here briefly, and then we'll fire this bad boy up. See what we can go do with it here. Boy, should have had that set up better. Alright, let's see if we can fire this guy up. Now this is on E85. It's very cold, not very warm today. 40 something. And it's probably 50 in the garage here. Oh, there we go. Alright, well that wasn't anything even remotely bad. I thought that was going to be kind of tricky, but you can clearly see here it's not very warm. Right, so all right, we're gonna let this guy boot up. If you guys can see that, hold on a second. It's one of the old road race engineering jobbies. Boy, it sure does idle nice for being an E85 and being so cold too. All right, so we'll let this guy start to warm up. EGT sensor, all that good fun stuff. But all right, we'll be back in a minute or two when we go to back this bad boy out. All right, so you guys saw that there, that the car seemed to be going a little bit on the lean side. So I drove it back in here because it was sputtering like crazy. First thing I thought was, you know what, let's go check this this fuel filter. So he did have an aftermarket nice little filter on here, and this was really kind of funny. I just went ahead and took this thing apart, and this was the first thing I discovered. That's supposed to be flat, and from the pressure that has actually like deformed that down inside of there. In fact, well, here, I'll see if I can give you guys a little bit better of a view here of what I'm talking about. So this actually sits down inside there. Hold on, let me just throw that in there. That sits down inside there like that, right? So that's not supposed to be like that. That is obviously from contaminants and from the fuel pressure. So we're gonna have to fix that, or else we're gonna be dead in the water. Guys, so we started troubleshooting this a bit more. Just went in and actually checked all the plugs just to see what may have been causing this hesitation a little bit. You know, after cleaning out that fuel filter and seeing all the goo that was in there, a friend of mine actually reminded me that, hey, this could very well be one of the cars that has the problems with that old goo problems on the injectors. Well, sure enough, I've taken 2 of them out so far. This is the second of the 2, but I thought I'd just kind of share this with you guys. Hopefully you guys are able to see this okay. This is the infamous black goo that, if you've ever heard people talk about this before, this is outrageous. I mean, this is just... it's so gooey. Needless to say, I'm sure these injectors are not firing anywhere near their potential 1050, right? 1050 cc's. Maybe if I do that against my hand, you can really see that. I mean, look at how nasty that is. Oh, it's just wrong. Oh, it's just wrong in so many ways. But I'm gonna keep working on this. I'm gonna keep taking these the other 2 injectors out, and then I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna clean these suckers out as best I possibly can. If not, you know, I'm just going to do a quick little home remedy. The old 9-volt, spray it out with brake cleaner trick. Might work, might not work. I don't know. Maybe a little gasoline run through this thing. Maybe a little pressure system, something. Just to kind of do a quick little home test. Or what I really should do is I probably will just send these off to a buddy of mine that actually does cleaning on these things. But thought you guys would like to see that. We'll keep plugging along here. Alright guys, so I'll show you a really neat little trick here. So if you're suspecting that you may have trouble with a fuel pressure regulator, there's a neat little trick you can do, or a neat little test I should say. So I've just got the vacuum line connected over to a gauge, which hopefully you guys can see that gauge coming down to nothing more than just an ordinary foot pump. Now I like to use a foot pump instead of an air compressor because I can control this a whole lot easier than I can anything else. So first and foremost, I do have ECM link on here as well, so I do have the ability of just simply coming up here and turning on the fuel pump. So fuel pump's on, car's not running. Hopefully you guys can read that okay. Looking at about 39 psi with the fuel pressure. Here's the really interesting part. So as I start to, maybe you guys can see both of these at the same time, as I start to apply pressure with the pump, I can take this neat little gauge up to whatever I want here. So in case, you know, that case I'm at 10 psi, I should be seeing about 48. I'm not. I'm seeing about 43. Take it up to 15. You know, yeah, same thing, right? I mean, I should be 53-ish, right? It's not there. So there's something definitely going on. Not only that, notice as soon as I actually come up here and shut off the fuel pump, it immediately bleeds down. Just completely bleeds down to nothing in a few seconds flat. So there's something going on inside that fuel pressure regulator. These are incredibly simple little devices. I'm going to go ahead and take it apart, take a look at the ball and seat that's in there. My suspect is that the little ball and seat just simply aren't matching to each other. So we can either try to refine that just a little bit and make it to where it'll sit tight. But we'll jump back in here in a second when I get that guy apart. So now that I've got the FPR kind of dissected here, you can definitely see what was going on. So a little bit of galling down in there, just kind of around where the seat is. In fact, I probably ought to back up just a step. This is the diaphragm itself. The diaphragm, of course, sits down inside here. Nice little lineup for the bolts and whatnot. And then there is a spring and a brass piece, and of course the cap that goes over the whole thing. So once you have this all together, that little threaded piece that you're pushing down on is actually pushing against this spring that ultimately holds that seat shut. Now, what this basically ends up happening is after so many cycles, so many just constantly pounding on this thing just over and over again, you have a tendency to kind of wear that little area out. Now, that is just nothing more than just aluminum, right? I would suspect a 6061, something of that quality, but this is a hardened stainless ball that's in this little diaphragm here. So this thing sits there and hammers it over and over again. Plus you've got fluid going by it, and we all know that some type of erosion could potentially happen, and that's exactly what it seems to be happening here. So we try to shut off the fuel pump, and we immediately lose pressure because it's just seeping past that, whereas it should be holding pressure steady. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the sandpaper trick. I'll show you guys what that's about. So some of you may be wondering, what is the sandpaper trick? So I'll show you. So I like to take a ordinary Sharpie here, just go around the seating area. Okay, now this is just kind of like it's kind of like almost like the same way you do a Prussian blue on a gear, right? So 1000 grit sandpaper. Oops, wrong side. Ball and seat. That ball sits inside that seat, of course. That's what creates the blockage, basically increasing fuel pressure. But I'll show you something really neat. If you just take that, set this guy in there, find the seat, then once it's in there, hold both of them and rotate, okay? Just kind of let them work back and forth. Pull some new sandpaper into the mix there. And I always like to just kind of give it just a gentle little twisting motion, right? Pull it over, get some new sandpaper in there. Do it again, right? Now you guys are looking at up close shots of my fingers, but you get the idea here. Needless to say, when you get her all done, right? I mean, you can see that that's doing that. But better yet, notice now, it actually looks pretty good. Let's see, I mean, that was actually pretty good. I mean, most of the black had come off, and that seat was pretty well matched. Now you can even do things like use contact paper to see where the seat sits in there. I like to do this since it is 1000 grit sandpaper. I'm not using anything too strong here. It's not anything that's gonna immediately gouge it. I mean, 1000 grit sandpaper is basically like polishing aluminum. It's amazing what you do to aluminum with 1000 grit sandpaper. But yeah, I mean, that actually looks pretty good. I think we might be pretty close to it now. One thing to keep in mind too, I always like to just pop these fittings off of the bottom, blast some air through here, let it pop out from the side or from the top. You can also just open this up, turn on the fuel pump, and it'll basically wash out any of the goo that you've left in there, any of the fine dust shavings that may be in your fuel system. But that's the trick. This is the silly little sandpaper trick that you use to basically reinvigorate those seats. See how nice that sits? And that seat actually looks pretty good. It's getting pretty darn shiny all the way around. We'll do this a couple more times, then we'll test the fuel pressure again. There we go. So we got it all put back together. Let's go ahead and set the fuel pressure now. Go ahead and turn that guy back on. No leaks or anything. So far it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and set the fuel pressure. Guys, you may notice I've got some good old plumber's tape on there. Yours probably leaks. If you don't have that tape on there, it's funny. It's like one of the greatest uses for that tape, in fact. Oh, I overshot it just a wee bit. Went up a little bit too high. Oh, that's all right. Well, we're up at 43 right now, but here's what I want to show you guys. Here's the really interesting thing about this. So now we'll go ahead and, well, let's see. Can you guys see that? Hopefully you can see that. Go ahead and give her some boost, right? Give her a little bit of pressure, right? And of course the fuel pressures come up, but here's the really fun part. So now if I shut off the fuel pump, it shouldn't bleed down near as fast as it was before. There we go. All right, so fuel pump's off. that was bleeding down before. It bled down a couple of PSI pretty quick, but honestly, I'm not real sure about this gauge. I think this gauge is kind of a little bit wonky, but the good thing is that it's now holding some type of fuel pressure, which is really nice, because now we know we're not leaking out of there. But I thought you guys would like to see that. All right, so here comes a fun one. You can see the fuel pressure down there, right? And then over here we've got our boost. So I'm going to show you, basically should be close to a 1-to-1 relationship. If I start to apply, you know, yeah, that's, I don't know, 42, 43-ish. Get it up to 10. Yeah, that should be just under the 50, which it is. 15, right? Yeah, that looks good. Take her up to, see, 20 PSI boost. Yeah, just about 60, right? Right about where we should be. So seems like everything's working pretty good. All right. All right, guys. So I think we finally got this thing sorted out. All the fuel system obviously is taken care of. You guys watched the video up until this point. I think everything looks pretty good. Looking at everything, yeah, we're getting pretty close on AFRs. I think everything looks all right. I'm out here on somewhat of an abandoned road. Just gonna make a quick U-turn here. Just give it a little bit of a spirited pull. Jesus Christ. Yep. Yep. I think she's doing just fine. That made all the difference in the world, guys. So there you go. Got all the fuel systems sorted out. Man, this thing pulls like a banshee. Good God. And you know, obviously, fuel things are fixed. Great, so there you go. We've resurrected this car. We've got it to a drivable state, obviously with more than enough power. We'll see what happens next. We're either going to turn this thing up or we're going to turn this thing down, depending on what we decide to do with it. But we do have a couple of different plans for this car. I'm pretty excited about what we're going to potentially do with this car, but you guys will just have to see it in the upcoming months. Good grief. Yeah, this thing is it's definitely plenty of power. All right, guys, I'm going to end this video here. We'll call that part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. That'll be coming here shortly. All right.